So this is the LPPA Town Hall with Mr. Nekhaila and Mr. Rutherford. Both are running for chair of the LNC. We're gonna have them both introduce themselves, and then anyone can ask whatever questions they want. As always, just try to be considerate to each other, and just raise your hands when you want to ask a question. I'll let you go first, Mr. Rutherford, and then
That's fine. Yeah. How do you want me to give a little statement or just say I'm Mark Rutherford? I'm from
Yep.
Indianapolis, Indiana, practice law here. I've been a life member of the Libertarian Party for a long time. I first joined the Libertarian Party in 1996, but my exposure to it was right when it was formed when my father, who was a political columnist and a copy editor for the Indianapolis News, wrote a short column 2 or 3 times a week about politics across the nation in general for it. I reported on it and I first learned about it. He found them intriguing and liked some of the ideas that they had. And in 1980, some of my fraternity brothers volunteered to pass out literature in my college town for the Clark campaign. Started giving money and doing some support for libertarians in the early 90s, and just finally decided, after hearing Harry Brown around 94, 95, I got closer and closer and said, the Libertarian Party is for me. It's how we can affect change politically. I've been involved in politics all my whole life. Some of my earliest memories, being 2, 3 years old, and what was then considered appropriate in Indiana, which was whoever dominated the county got to use the county garages for political functions. And so I was used to going to those and going across the state to see those. So I have an idea of how politics works, what it is, and what you can do to make changes that are positive. So that's kind of, the short background of me. I was state chair for 7 years of Indiana, been on the Libertarian National Committee as the vice chair for 2 years. Before that, I was on it for about 5 or 6 years as a region rep and then an at-large member. So that is kind of basically my background is with the Libertarian Party. I've done a lot more beyond that, but I'll let Stephen go ahead and introduce himself if you'd like.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Stephen Nekhaila. I've been involved with the Libertarian Party since 2014. Prior to that, I was a member of Young Americans for Liberty in FIU, and back in the day, served as the president of the chapter there for a year or so. Went to Paul Fest in Tampa, discovered the Libertarian Party through Gary Johnson, registered as Libertarian right away. My buddy in the Keys, one of my good friends, Mike Kane, reached out to me on a cold call and said, "Hey, would you like to be involved in the party? We want to create an affiliate down here." So we went ahead, created the Libertarian Party of Florida Keys affiliate back in 2014. By 2015, I was on the board of the Libertarian Party of Florida as Region 2 representative. Went on to serve there until I became treasurer, and then I served two terms as chair, 2019 to 2023. Served since 2015 on the Libertarian National Committee, first as Region 2 alternate, then as Region 2, and this last term I served as the at-large director for the LNC. Been on the board for a long time, seen a lot of chairs come and go, seen what works, what doesn't work, and that inspired me to run for the chair this time around. In my professional life, I am a Wendy's franchisee, Dairy Queen franchisee. Also operate the Island Grill in Alamorada. We also have a movie theater here in the Tavernier. Oversee about 250 employees, many different businesses, and my goal running for chair is to bring my professional experience into the seat of chair and try to get the Libertarian Party to its deserved place as a much more fruitful, better organized, better managed and administered organization that I know we can be. That's my short introduction.
Perfect. I do know that one of our members in the chat, she doesn't want to be named, but wants to know if you win, will you shave your head?
Will I shave my head? Man, I'm probably not that far away from doing it anyway, to be honest with you. I think my prognosis on my hair is not looking too good. So I'm gonna have probably a fade when I show up to convention. So yeah, I think if I win chair, I'll probably by the end of it, I'll probably lose my hair anyway.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Rutherford or Mr. Nekhaila before I ask the ones that were previously submitted? Go ahead, Alpha.
So this is a completely out of the blue question, but I'd like to ask both of you, why do you think it is that there isn't a closer association between the LP and the Cato Institute?
Would you like to
Who's
start,
up?
TJ?
You can go first, Mr. Rutherford. Or actually,
Yeah.
Mr. Nekhaila, you introduced first. I'll have Mr. Nekhaila go first.
Fine.
I mean, we're the same movement. I think the Libertarian Party is in the same ecosystem as Cato, as Mises, as Phi, as FIRE, as a lot of organizations. As far as our associations, I think that there is a lot of back and forth in terms of personnel and policies between all of them. There might be disagreements at times. I think the Libertarian Party, as the political wing of the libertarian movement, has always tried to stand on its own 2 feet as the Libertarian Party. I think, we certainly have always welcomed folks from across the libertarian spectrum into the party. So I don't think it's on purpose necessarily that perhaps the Cato Institute's not closer to us, but we've essentially always forged our own path. So I think that's probably primarily wise. The Cato Institute serves more as a different function than the party. The party really serves as a function to gain political power. And as libertarians, we want to gain political power, not to climb up the ladder and kick it off and have power as a means to an end, but we want to achieve political power in order to represent libertarians, in order to safeguard liberty. That's what makes us different as libertarians. The political party is a group of minorities who come together, and I think that a group of 100 men is stronger than a group of 1,000 because we're organized and they're not, and that's why we have a libertarian party, and that's why we exist.
Yeah, TJ, they are two different organizations.
And actually had
Sorry, go ahead.
Pardon? Okay.
Someone forgot to mute, that's all.
Yeah, they are two different organizations. They have two different ways to deal with things. We have lots of commonality on things that we do agree on, but they do it in a different approach than we do it And the thing about the Cato Institute, though, I've over the years talked to many people who are involved in it at all different levels of Cato. And one thing that is very important and why I'm running is because I've got lots of experience in running things effectively, running it from the level that it should be for what the organization is. And the biggest complaint Cato has about the Libertarian Party, and like anybody, they have the right to say what they think, is that we don't get organized enough. We don't do what we need to do to get done what we're going to say we're going to do. That, whether it's, I think there's a lot of justification to it. Cato's not perfect, neither is the Libertarian Party, but that is something that I think causes a little bit of a difference between the two of us. But we have a lot in common, and we should work on trying to do more together where we do have things in common, as we do in any other group. As Stephen talked about, there's all types of different libertarian groups out there. He mentioned a lot of we all should be working together to change the political landscape.
Mr. Baker, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, hello there. What do you guys think about the recent lawsuit happening with Michigan?
Yeah, I don't like lawsuits, even though I'm a litigation attorney and a business law attorney. That there's more things you should do to try to solve disputes. I wish that would be done rather than the lawsuits. I'm not a big fan of any of the lawsuits that are out there, no matter who's filing them. I'm sorry that it's gone to this position. And part of it is just from my experience, having been involved in the Libertarian Party for so long. I've seen lawsuits threatened. I've seen many very difficult situations finally resolved, and everybody's again able to move forward. I think those tend to be quicker, although it's slow, and it's the best thing to do. I'm not a big fan of lawsuits unless you absolutely have no other alternative. And I'm not so sure that all the alternatives were explored.
Originally, I was for the lawsuit, but as time has gone by, I've had some time to revisit it. I think that the situation is actually quite tragic that we find ourselves in with the suit and everything surrounding it. And I would be willing to revisit it and see if this is something that we can bring to arbitration. If both sides are willing to nip this in the bud and put this behind us, I think that would be a good way forward, not only for both the LNC in Michigan, but the party as a whole. And moving forward, I do believe that the LNC should generally be out of state affairs unless something really egregious is occurring. I know there's a lot of spats that occur, schisms within state parties at times. I think if that does occur, and I put out on my Facebook page basically a strategy to how we might be able to handle that. If we do choose to get involved, I think the best approach is leadership, to get in and see if we can try to resolve it with both parties. If that's not possible, move to third party mediation, and if that, arbitration. And if you go into the details, I did lay out a little bit more points as to how that might actually work within the committee concretely. And I do think that these lawsuits, what they do is they divide the spirit of the party. They create schisms that resonate far further than the states that they are in, and ultimately they're at a cost, a financial cost, but also a moral cost, I think. So, moving forward from here, I really don't want to see any more lawsuits. I'm a businessman. I'm not an attorney. I don't like to have to engage in the law unless we have to. And sometimes we have to, but I would rather that sword be pointed at the state and its subsidiaries, especially when they're trying to take us off the ballot and some of the other important issues. And I think that's really where our legal apparatus should be pointed, not within.
As a follow-up to that, recently the Michigan JC issued their ruling to the credentialing committee. They ruled that the credentialing committee should do not credential 27 delegates. If the other side filed litigation, would you both support helping the current chair in Michigan fight that off and back the JC of Michigan? So
Would you like to go first?
yeah.
Now, Stephen, are you going first, or I'm sorry?
Steven, you go first. Yep.
Okay, sure. I'm not too familiar with the JC's ruling. I'd have to read through it to get a better understanding. But I think reaching out to the credentials committee on this would be the best step to see what they say, because ultimately we elected the credentials committee to do their job. And I think with the credentials committee, what they rule on, because they do have the power to rule on this and to make decisions, I would say that this decision lies within the credentials committee, and I would let them do their job and use their prudence and fair judgment to make a decision that I think they're well equipped to handle.
Yeah,
I was saying real quick, if the losing side were to sue the LNC credentialing committee and by proxy Michigan, would you support the LNC releasing funds to fight that lawsuit? On top of that, so if the credentialing committee sides with the JC and removes those 27 delegates, those 27 delegates sue, would you support defending that litigation?
Well, if they're suing us, then we'd have to have a meeting and sit down and figure out what our next steps would be and see if this is something that we can not have to go through the courts on. So I would still refer to, can we mediate this? Can we arbitrate this? Where's the timeline? Because right now there's really not, I mean, unless they plan to go about this in the next 7 days, I just don't think that that's realistic. But I would have to seek legal counsel on that, LNC legal counsel, before making a decision on that.
Okay, Mr. Rutherford, go ahead.
Yeah, the fiduciary duty of the LNC, if they are sued, is to talk to legal counsel about what all the effects might be. And just because you don't like lawsuits doesn't mean you can't defend yourself if you're sued. But it's really close to the convention, and what matters are the credential committee makes its recommendations about who's going to be credentialed. Those who are credentialed at the convention make the ultimate decision, right or wrong. You kind of have to deal with that. And they would make the decision on what they thought about the JC decision of Michigan and its authority, et cetera, et cetera. It really boils down to the convention, and that's 7 days away. I don't think a lawsuit's going to interfere with that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I know some people are concerned about that with them with the lawsuits and everything. Um, one of the other questions that was submitted was, how do you plan to grow membership and the influence of the Libertarian Party nationwide as chair?
Yeah, and I think I'm first this one.
Yes.
I mean, that is what I'm all about. I'm all about having a 30,000-foot national organization working to make the state stronger so that they can find people who can lead the party, do a good job of it, and train people how to find candidates and have good candidates running. And what's a good candidate depends on the jurisdiction you're in. I mean, there are people I would not run in Indiana, but would be great in other states and vice versa. And there'd be people great for Indiana to run and not good in another state. I know that, and you have to give a lot of deference to the states on what they should do, but they need to run as many candidates as they can that are good, well-trained, and then do things to get people to learn how to raise the money to support the candidates. Libertarian Party of Indiana, we've elected at least 30 people to a partisan office. We've had several people elected in nonpartisan office, which are not many in Indiana. We've got 39 people that we know of that have been appointed over the years to political positions. We were appointed as the other, Republican or Democrat, and many times in Indiana, can only appoint so many people from their party. They have to appoint from another party for the remaining appointments. And we get some of those. That's how you get the influence out there. The people like you. That's why over the years we've developed it so that in 2020, our gubernatorial candidate got about 11.5% of the vote, I believe. It's that, and it's probably a little bit more. We don't need to go into why we think that, but that's pretty good. But what we do know for certain is that in 1/3 of the counties, that's 92 counties in Indiana, our gubernatorial candidate came in second place, beating the Democrat. So if you run well, if you try to educate people, and when you educate people what you're about, you can't give the whole thing to people and do an hour, 2-hour presentation. They leave after 30 seconds or a minute. You have to learn to give the bites, to start showing people what you're about, what you're good at, and pick and choose those things that you want to first get people to say, okay, I'll give you a chance to try it. Ron Paul was excellent at doing that in Texas after he ran for president as a libertarian. I've talked to people who worked with him, and what he would do is he'd have polling and find out where people were in his congressional district. And those things that were close to libertarian or definitely libertarian that the people believed in, he ran on them. Those things that were close, he tried to get people to say, give me a chance, I can do it. And every election, he would do that. And he had more and more people voting for him, even though people knew that he had the libertarian background, and had a very successful congressional career after he ran for president as a libertarian in 1988, because he did that. He took steps and he educated people. And you have to have good elevator speeches. You have to be able to tell people where it is that you think they should be and why. I do a lot of jury trials, a lot of trials with judges. They don't know what I know. I have to figure out what it is I tell them to get them to realize that my client deserves the relief or the defense that they're being given. So that's a major way you do it. And you don't do it by just being, oh my gosh, everything's terrible. I mean, we're seeing that with Biden and Trump and others out there. We have the opportunity to show positively how we can change things and help make people's lives better. And we need to do that. It takes a lot of hard work, but the National Party does it at the 30,000-foot level. It guides policy, it sets policy, it hires staff, it raises money, it finds somebody in a state that isn't that active who has money and wants to help, and tells them, why don't you go this place? Talk to them about how you can support their candidates. That is what the National Party does. And let the states and their affiliates, their counties, their parishes, townships, whatever the affiliates are where they're running candidates, to be better at it and to know how to do it.
So I played lacrosse for 5 years, and my coach would always say, fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. And we always hated it because we always want to do the fancy stuff. But we ran more than the sprinters, but we ran less than the cross country team. We focused on ground balls, throws, ran just the basics, and we were one of the most successful teams out there. We played against private schools and we beat them, and they were pretty upset because we were a lowly public school down here in the Keys. And I think what my goal is for the LNC is to return back to the fundamentals. What does that look like? Membership, fundraising, growing staff back to capacity, focusing on affiliate support and candidate support and ballot access. Those are the things we need to do. And the first thing I want to see to get us back on track as far as fundraising and membership goes is to really nail down back on those fundamentals, have the board focus on what that looks like in terms of setting goals, looking at KPIs, looking at our membership retention rates, and actually forming goals quarter over quarter and meeting those goals. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that the board just hasn't, the party hasn't really taken for whatever reason. We just haven't reached out there and grabbed the low-hanging fruit. Things like digital marketing, things like looking at our data, growing our data sets, reaching out to people that are libertarian adjacent that we haven't reached out to them yet to see if they want to come over, even reaching out to our own members and actually touching people that haven't been reached out to in years that have stopped donating. Those are all basic things we can do to get back on track as far as fundraising goes, but we just really haven't drilled down to those fundamentals. And once we start raising money, that allows us to do all the other stuff we need to do, fully funding ballot access, because without ballot access, then what are we? We really don't have as much value as a third party. There's a reason why RFK wants to run as a libertarian, because he went out there, so did Kanye West and others, and they tried to do the Ross Perot thing and get on the ballot in all 50 states, and they realized it's very, very hard. And it's actually impossible. We don't live in a free democracy. It takes years and years and years of millions of dollars and a huge amount of personnel and work on the ground in order to get 50 state ballot access, which besides us and to a lesser extent the Greens, there really is no competition in the third party space. So we're in a very unique position that I think we really need to grow the party if we want to be effective. At $1 million+ per year, we're a very small political entity. There's political action committees and nonprofits that are much larger than us that do a lot less than us. I'm on the board of the Key West Chamber of Commerce. We make about a third of what the LNC makes. I'm sure the Florida Chamber of Commerce makes many times what we make. As a political entity, we should be making $10 million, $20 million a year minimum. And really, we should be $100 million per year plus in order to be where we really need to be. And a lot of that comes down to good management, knowing your numbers, setting the goals as an organization, and proactively seeing that those goals are met and finding ways to meet those goals. And we have ways to meet those goals that we haven't taken yet. There's a lot of opportunities for us to grow. And I think that as far as membership and fundraising goes, that's really our cornerstone that we need to get really, really good at so that we can do everything else really, really good. And then after that, we can start doing the fancy stuff. But fundamentals are key.
Perfect. Next question is my wife submitting it. She's at work, but she wants to know how both of you intend to foster unity within the party with the ongoing caucus wars. Mr. Rutherford, you're first.
Pardon, I'm first. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Caucuses have never been that popular in the Libertarian Party if you look at the history of it. And a lot of libertarians, just by their nature, don't like the caucuses. But it's natural to have different groups, people who hang around people that they have more in common with when it comes to lots of things, including, the approaches and the priorities on that. But you have to have unity. And that's one of the big things you do as chair, is try to unify the Libertarian National Committee to make decisions. I do it all the time as chairman of the Indiana Public Defender Commission. I'm appointed by Republican governors to keep a Democrat off of the commission. And I've got roughly 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans on it and myself. We're very, very effective at what we do. We run it from a 30,000-foot level. We set the priorities. We hire excellent people to be on the staff. We pay them well, they stay. We tell them what we want to do. We tell them their parameters. from both sides, from every side, about what they should do. And we do that, and we get that done. And we're becoming one of the most, if not the most effective criminal justice agencies in Indiana. I believe we are the most effective one, in that we have all types of people, state legislators, county people, et cetera, talk to us. And the beauty of it, me being on it, is I get my libertarian bent on it, and sometimes I get it's more libertarian than it would be without me being there. And we get things done, and we're doing things that actually we're beginning to show that we're saving the state money, because we're doing things that stop doing things that are costing money and doing things more effectively and saving the taxpayers money. So there's just, a lot that out there that you deal with.
So when I ran for city commission back in 2022, ran a strong campaign, but unfortunately didn't make it to the general election. I endorsed one of my opponents. She won by 17 votes. I like to think I had something to do with that. But that race and being involved in Key West since then has really taught me a lot about unity and working together with other people. I've gotten involved with the Key West Chamber of Commerce, gotten involved with a lot of people that are involved politically, locally. And you have a mixture of Republicans, Democrats, independents. You have a mixture of conks, as we call them, conks that live down here, and the folks, the Yankees that come down and move down here that are also part of the political game. And you have to be able to work amongst different groups to be effective politically in the real world. And I think we've lost a little bit of that tact in the Libertarian Party. If you look at human nature, what happens in political entities is that when you don't have an overall unifying goal, people split into groups and they start acting out of self-interest. And no political movement has been able to stand the test of time that has had those issues. So I think it's more important than ever that we start working together. I think a lot of that happens at the leadership level. And I think if you look at the classical liberal caucus and the Mises caucus and the moderates in between, I call them the GDIs, the goddamn independents. I think everybody wants to see the same thing. They want to see the party respected. They want to see us successful. They want to see us advance the cause of liberty, get libertarian candidates elected, see the party grow, see membership grow, see fundraising grow, see 50 state ballot access. I think if we unite under common goals at the board level and we give everybody a voice who wants to pitch in and put in their labor, their time, and their finances to this party, their resources to this party, we need to let them, and we need to foster a solid foundation where we're all really working together, because if we're a house divided, it's going to fall. And I think we don't have a choice but to work together towards a common goal. So setting the goal, good leadership starts at the top, starts at the board level, and I think it trickles down. And as chair, I would intend to foster that culture where fertile culture where good ideas and good teamwork grows. That's been the case in the business world for me, and I've seen it work, and I've seen what doesn't work. So that we need to create a culture that people are working together.
Does anyone have any questions in the group before I ask the next one that was submitted? Or see if anyone raises their hands. A couple people are probably at work still. So one of the ones, and I'm sure Mr. Rutherford would know where this one's coming from. It's coming from two people, one from his state. As you know, Evan McMahon and I both sit on the candidate support committee for national. One of the biggest gripes that the national candidate support committee has is that we were given a budget, and then we have to we have meetings with candidates to fund them. And then, Evan and I and Dustin and the fellow members will be like, sure, we want to give this guy money or this woman money. And then we have to submit that as a recommendation to the LNC to give this person money. And then oftentimes it takes 2-3 months, and one person needed an attorney. They can't wait 2-3 months to hire their attorney. So what we want to see from the next chair is that we have a budget we are allowed to spend our budget as long as we don't surpass our budget. Then we just submit a request to the treasurer to pay out the funds to the candidate and the secretary. Is that something that you would support? Mr. Nekhaila, you're first.
Absolutely. When I was on the affiliate support committee, we had about a $10,000 budget to do whatever we wanted with, and we didn't have to go through the LNC at all. As far as I'm concerned, I think that the subcommittees are just an extension of the authority of the board. And when that authority is granted and funds are granted, you should be able to spend that money on whatever you see fit. As long as that's within your budget, that committee decides how it's going to be spent. I know in the past, the board has had discussions about how do we handle it when candidates come to the board and they ask for money, as we've had happen over the years. And so we created this process where they have to have certain things that they have to show us in order for us to consider them to be able to pay them out. But as you've realized, that's a bureaucratic process and it takes time and possibly more time than the candidate has by the time the recommendation comes to the board and we actually have a meeting and actually vote on it. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that you guys and any other subcommittee should have, if there's funds allocated, to just spend those funds. If it's a part of our affiliate support line item, and it's not a part of the affiliate support committee line item, I think that's something that should be changed. And the more money we have as a party, the more money we can give to subcommittees to do their work. I mean, we've got people who are qualified to make these decisions, like you and Evan and Dustin and others. You should be able to make those decisions because we've entrusted you to make those decisions. So unless that committee is worded differently, where it has to come to the board and then we have to decide on it, I think that it should be within the committee's prudence to be able to spend the money on behalf of the LNC.
Yeah, everybody, if you set up a committee, you set up a budget, you say you want to do things, then you let them do things. That's what you do. Libertarians have to be able to let go and allow that. Within the Public Defender Commission, we set a budget. We tell the staff, here's your budget. We don't say do this, do that, and come to us all the time. They don't, because they have the authority to spend what it is. If we don't like what it is, we can tell them that later. But, and that tells us maybe we don't have the right people in the right places. But if you tell a group to do something and you give a budget, you just write the check when they make the decision. That's what you do. And what the LNC does is it has to be like the 30,000 foot level and say, here's the policy. If we're going to have a group and this is what they're to do, and if they decide to do these things within these parameters, we've offered this type of money for them to spend what they want to spend it on. So I understand the frustrations there, and you have to trust everybody to do what it is, and if it doesn't work, then you don't do it anymore. Now, oftentimes it works well, and sometimes it works far better if you let people do what you've asked them to do, and to spend and not to have a huge bureaucratic mess. And part of the reason I don't like government is I don't like bureaucracies. I hate bureaucracies. I deal with them all the time. I get paid money to deal with them, but my gosh, there's a lot more I could do than that. And people are frustrated and they hire lawyers to deal with it. We shouldn't have the same type of bureaucracies that government has. And sometimes we're just as bad and we can't do that. You allocate the money. Staff knows they can write the check because it's what it is that they said they would do, and they just did it.
Okay. And to follow up on that, one of the other issues of contention is we have been handcuffed by certain staff members within the LNC. Some are no longer with the LNC. How would you streamline most of our issues are within IS. How would you streamline IS as chair to be able to implement issuing, say, a committee an email address quicker? We've been waiting 2 years for an email address. Putting the candidate support request form on the website, which has been ready for 1 year and 9 months. And it meets the criteria for the policy. It's just a question that helps us streamline our job faster. Candidates don't even know about it. Evan didn't know about it till he joined the committee. And he's a chair. That the state chair should know this, but we're not getting the messaging out. And part of those struggles have been with IS committee just being overburdened between the CRM and everything else, how would we support them to be able to do the more mundane tasks that need to be done?
I think
Which one's
it's
for you?
mine.
Yep,
It's adequate staff for one thing, and the staff doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, the LNC, usually through the chair, has to tell this. Sometimes you have to get rid of staff members. You have to have the discipline to do what needs to be done. And you also have to have the discipline to know that if you don't have the money and you want to do this stuff, you've got to go out and raise the money to hire the staffers. So there's a lot of things that have to be done to do this, but reacting and supporting on those basic things should be done automatic and shouldn't take more than 24 business hours. You get the request on Friday, you should have it fulfilled on Monday for something that should be relatively simple. If you don't have the software, if you don't have the staff, etc., then the staff, the executive director, who shouldn't be the chair, the executive director must be an independent person who fulfills what the LNC says is the policy. You just got to make sure that it gets done. And if you don't have enough money, then you've got to find and go out and make the phone calls to do that. I mean, one of the first things that happens when I'm elected chair is I've got people lined up to call tons of people and say, look, Rutherford's chair or I'm chair. Now you've been speaking up. Now you need to give money and give it now, because we need to set this up and make it go forward and make it go efficiently. The staff in the LNC aren't the thing. We're the ones that are trying to help the states, and anything that we create with the subcommittee get things done. And we have to have that approach as the Libertarian National Committee, not do it ourselves, but make sure that we gather those things because of our long experience, our history in business, in other nonprofit organizations, in for-profit organizations, in the Libertarian Party, and whatever you have in your background that says that you can be on the National Committee and should be on it, you have to make sure that you use those to get those done so that the people who are implementing it can get it done. And communication is essential. That's a big problem in all organizations. You have to have newsletters. You can do it many different ways, sometimes print, sometimes by social media, email, text, but you've got to get the word out that these are the things that are available and how you do it. If it's not working, that's the fundamentals that need to be fixed. And a political party has to be we're doing something that's very important to do by fundamentals to get the job done. And we have to do it.
So 3 things to answer your question. One, when I was EPCC, well, I am still the EPCC chair, about a year and a half ago, I started getting complaints from some other board members who were heading committees that they were not able to work with the staff in the capacity that they needed to in order to do their job. So as EPCC chair, we came out with some policies that made it a little bit more flexible to be able to work with staff. I understand we obviously don't want staff to be using all their time on things that don't concern them, but these things concern them. And subcommittees and LMC members need to be able to interface with staff. I mean, and I think they that's how we need to be able to run the organization. So I think we need to really set some guidelines to be able to relax that more, allow staff to work with subcommittees and make sure that it gets done in a timely manner. One of the things that I instituted as LPF chair is we started doing monthly committee chair calls. So I had my vice chair in every single committee meeting, even if it was for 15 minutes, to touch base with that committee, see how things are going and report back to me. But we also held monthly committee calls where all the committee chairs got together on a phone call. And I would go around the room and say, hey guys, what's going on in your committee? What can we do to support you? How can you support each other? And a lot of the time it would end up with really good synergy. You'd have the communications committee working with the convention committee to help figure out how we're going to push out messaging for convention. Or you'd have the communications committee, which was also our IT committee, working with the affiliate support committee to help affiliates out. So that level of communication needs to go up the chain, and it needs to also be holographic. It needs to work across the board at the level of the committee chairs working together. One of the things that I played with as an idea that I think I'd like to see instituted is an LP Insider newsletter. So folks who aren't among the general population of membership who receive our regular newsletter, folks like our state chairs, our members who are active volunteers in the party on state boards and the county level, candidates, all those folks should be getting updates regularly on what's happening, on who to contact, what the program does, how do you get involved. That information just gets lost, and there's no clear official channels to pass down information that matters to the state chairs and everyone underneath them who would benefit from the information. So I think setting up an LP Insider newsletter as a way to communicate internally is something that we ought to do for official communications that aren't necessarily blast out to the whole party. And communication is key. Communication is what runs businesses. I spend 90% of my time on my laptop or my phone to run my businesses. And I think that without communication or a breakdown of communication, you see a lot of problems arise. So that's one area where we have a lot of opportunity that I think can be addressed quite easily.
Awesome. Chris, go ahead.
This is one of my prized possessions. Anyway, you'll see it next week. But are you guys paying any attention to what's been going on in Argentina? Because we have a libertarian there who did not compromise his message and did not have a lot of money as well. But somehow he got elected. And I've talked to 45 people who about him on my podcast. Also, I put a link to a talk with his publicist in the chat if you want to check that out. That was a really good chat. It's all in English. But are you guys paying any attention to Milei? Are you seeing what you can learn from this? Because this is a coalition that was built 4 years ago, and it's already got more success than we have in 50.
I think, is it me or you, Stephen?
Steve's
Steven.
turn.
Fuera. Milei is incredible. That's my guy. I remember the night I heard he got elected, I was screaming out on my back porch. I was so excited. Milei is, I think he's a sign of the times as far as libertarianism goes. And we have to remember we're not just a United States political party, we're a political philosophy that knows no borders. There's libertarian parties and libertarians all around the globe that are fighting the good fight for freedom. I think Milei has been the most successful in that regard as far as his political success, and I'm eager to see how Argentina flourishes after 100 years of socialism and communism to move into a libertarian direction. So I love Milei. I'm here in Key West. I'm in South Florida. There's a lot of Latin American influence here. When I walk around with my Milei shirt on, people have a good reaction to it, and it's something that I think tells us that we don't need to play respectability politics necessarily or kowtow to Republican or conservative or Democratic or liberal tendencies. That we need to narrate our message as a political party and a political philosophy in a way that educates and inspires people, but also is hardline libertarian. I don't think we need to compromise our message. No, I think we need to be who we really are, and we're libertarians, and we're very specific about that. You know, there was a post today I saw. It was actually kind of ironic because I was talking to Larry Sharp earlier, and I mentioned that if we're going to talk about ending the welfare state, we need to back that up with, well, what does the welfare state look after it's been stripped out of the government? We could talk about mutual aid societies and how they were basically destroyed after the turn of the 20th century when the government came in and instituted welfare and social security. How those welfare mutual aid societies were local, they helped people, they were actually centers of social interaction. People who benefited from those organizations gave back in, and they were very effective, and they were private, and they existed in the United States. But social security and welfare has essentially phased them out, and it keeps people locked into certain social classes. It doesn't teach them necessarily how to get out of those social classes or get out of their predicaments. It's a crutch, and we need a crutch in society, but we can do it privately from a libertarian lens. So I think we do need to be apologists for our policies and explain and educate, as well as keep hardline positions that are libertarian. We need to forge our own narratives. We don't want to borrow narratives from the right or from the left because we're not one of them, and we're not going to pretend to be one of them, and we're not going to be successful pretending to be something we're not. We need to be uniquely libertarian, not be afraid of who we are, and we need to foster the people that align with our message into our ranks. And it's really as simple or as hard as that.
Yeah, Malay did and has done for a long, long time before he even became on that well known on the political radar. What I've been suggesting that we do and what we do in Indiana and where we're getting closer and closer to bigger successes there. It just didn't happen over 4 years. He's been involved in trying to educate and talk to people and reach people for a very, very long time. Why do I know this? I have a very good friend who lives in Buenos Aires who's been giving me stuff about Milei for years. And it was great following how it's all come together. One thing I will notice is that Milei was able to reach and talk in a way and get people to understand, and the young people who are very frustrated with what was going on, to support him. And the support grew and grew and grew, and we saw what happened. So it's a fantastic thing. But he didn't just throw things out to be, I am better than you. He said, I've got a better way. And that's what he did. And some of it was pretty harsh, but he did it in a way where people understood why the harshness was there, unlike some of the presidential candidates that we've seen in the other parties recently here in the United States. Also, Argentina has a different history than we do, but there's a lot in common between us as well. But you have to understand that he knew how to do it. He's been a teacher, a professor, I believe, an economist, I know that. He's been on the stage, he's been practicing, he's been talking. He figured out what was said that people understood, and he's honed on it. And that's what we need to do as libertarians. We don't throw the whole thing at them. What we do is we say, hey, this is a good time right now, by the way, for marijuana legalization. Well, it is. And so we talk about that. That's a good topic. But there are other topics. Let's get marijuana legalized. Once we do that, let's move on to the next topic. I do that all the time in Indiana on politics, doing it on libertarian issues, talking to legislators, finding what we have in common, and explaining to them that they really should do this. We've changed the minds of many legislators where we've gotten some things done that are more libertarian. That's what you do to do it. Things get better. We get more votes. We start getting more people elected. I believe in focusing in small races because we do in Indiana compete financially and other regards with them and get people elected or almost elected. Milei, because of his positions and what he was doing, was able to raise enough money to get the word out. And he did. He raised it. Doesn't need to be as much as his opponents. And I know what it costs in Indiana to get the word out. In statewide races, we're not quite there. In local races, we are. And that's just very important. Once you reach that, libertarians are very good at getting the message out with a lot less money because we've had to learn how to do that. So he's just a great example. I think it's great what's going on in Argentina.
Well, as I've said, I think being the lead singer of a Rolling Stone cover band makes a huge difference. I mean, maybe we need to,
Yes.
yeah. And yeah, I know he's been on TV for a while. But it's just, but there's definitely some things, I think, lessons to be learned from this. So yeah, and Stephen, I sent you a message, by the way, nothing to do with this, but yeah, and I'd love to know who your friend is, Mark, too. That's cool because I've gotten to know a lot of people down there. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I guess my question also would be, I just had it on the tip of my tongue now, I'm forgetting it. But so with voter gravity being instituted, candidate support was one of the main people that brought that into play. Would you continue that program and even enhance it potentially as chair if we can get the funding?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, a matter of fact, back in 2020, myself and Jim Turney pushed a similar program, and I'm trying to remember the name, but it basically did the same thing as voter gravity. It was a candidate solution that had data and walk maps and door knocking maps and different things integrated in there, similar to voter gravity. There are common software suites out there. I think continuing to engage in a shared program like that would be phenomenal. And I think we really need to do even more than that for candidates as much as we can, really. As chair for 4 years, I can tell you that when people say, "Hey, I'm a libertarian, I'm gonna go and give money to the Libertarian Party," most of them don't give it to the state party. Most of them give it to the national party. So I think it's our duty as a national party to give back to the states and promote and support the states in ways that provide value to them. This is certainly one way. I hope we continue to do more. I think we can do more in terms of providing them advertising for their conventions through social media, through direct mail, through email, providing them data for libertarian leaning people that could be sent to their party to actually get signups to them. I think doing a data sharing program with the state parties would be another good step to promote them. You give us our data, we give you your data, and when we expand our data, we provide it to you, and hopefully rising tides raise all ships. But ultimately, I look at the duty of the LNC kind of like how I look at franchising as a Wendy's franchisee. We get a license from Wendy's to go and open up all these stores, and they provide us certain material support for us to do our job, and we all flourish. And I think the same things of the national party. For getting all these resources, we want to provide value to our candidates, to our states, et cetera. So the more we can do in that regard, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for us to do so, that ultimately needs to be our goal. Obviously, we can't do that without money. If we're hemorrhaging money or we're not making enough money, then we're just basically keeping the lights on. But the more we can do in terms of fundraising and membership, the more we can give back to the states. Let our cup overflow, and let the states be able to, and the candidates be able to take advantage of that. I think ultimately that is our long-term goal.
I'm a big believer in this old maxim that's out there that if you give somebody a fish, they eat one dinner. If you teach them how to fish themselves, then they have a lifetime of dinners. I'm a big believer in that we work with the states. We don't have to do everything. Voter gravity, I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with other programs like that. The LNC has to make decisions on its priorities, on its money, what it does, where it ends up on that. That's for the future. But you have to make decisions on what you do to teach the states what needs to be done, how to raise the money to do it themselves. I look at Indiana and other states that have done some of these things themselves. And the biggest complaint I hear from a lot of people who are involved in the states dealing with the national party, and this doesn't mean the last 2 years, it's over and over again, is that for a group that was on the cutting edge of all types of these programs 20, 30 years ago, we really made it confusing and hard, and we brought in programs that were too difficult for people way involved on it. They were great for a Harvard or a Indiana University, et cetera, which has big staffs. They weren't great for a place with a small staff. So we have to make sure that whatever we do, it's something that we can do well nationally. We don't waste time. I think we're better off teaching people what's out there, how to use it, how to raise the money to get it for their states and counties. And eventually we may get to the point where we're able to do system-wide communications on that. But it's been a big complaint, and it's been that way for years. I'd be very careful what we do. And when it comes to voter gravity, that's going to be a decision of the next LNC and what to do with it.
And then Mitch hit on it. Hey, I know he's at work, so he can't really talk. Within some states, because I don't want to single out our state, there has been a disconnect at times between IS and chairs of states, where IS completely hoards powers and controls over CRM and data access. And right now we're still tied to national CRM until it's switched over. If you became chair, would you authorize the national IS committee to override a state IS committee to give a chair access and teach the chair how to give his staff access?
I think that's me, correct?
Yeah, you're first. Yep.
Mm-hmm. the way I look at boards, the way I run them, I'm very influenced by John Carver, who I have heard was involved with libertarian stuff 30, 40 years ago. But he and his wife wrote a lot of things about boards, and a lot of it's very popular with especially school boards. A lot of school boards solve their problems by following what he recommends, and that is running a functional board that is at the 30,000 foot level and not trying to run everything day to day and hiring good staff on it. But you've got to allow this. To me, the states are the big thing, and the most important thing. The national has to be very supportive of them. And if you're going to have stuff, you need to treat all the states as equally as possible, as long as they're willing to take what it is that you're offering. But boy, I've heard so many things about CRM. Some like it, a lot don't like it. These are all messes, and it goes to a long history of it not being well done. And it seems to have been not very good at all for the last 2 years. So it's just to me, that if you're going to do something, you've got to give it to the states if you're going to do it, and let all the states use it equally. But I can't, as chair, say to do it unless the LNC tells me to do that. If the LNC hasn't made a decision, I can give my opinion on what to do and maybe bring it up later with the LNC. And when it comes to working best with people and best with states, the priority is the states. And yes, work with them. If you don't have enough staff, tell us. We then have to decide whether to raise money or we change our priorities.
So with the CRM that we had, Civi CRM, I was never married to any one particular system, but my understanding is one of the issues with Civi is that it was difficult to use. And unless you had somebody within your state that was very smart and knew how to use it, there was some capacity where people can mess things up for everybody. I think that may have played behind some of the decisions and some of the problems with access. I've spoken to a lot of very smart people, Evan McMahon, Ken Molman, gosh, who else? Folks down in Florida that were working on it with on the national board, and hearing from their perspectives, and they're very smart on this. They had some alternative methods as to what they thought would be a better way to administer it, and how the IS committee or how a CRM committee could better work on it. I think that's all up for discussion, but I think ultimately the problem with Civi is it was a difficult tool to use. We're entering into Zoho, which seems to be a better system from some of the very smart people I've spoken to. Quite frankly, I don't care what we use as long as it works. And I'm hoping that because this is a joint venture, the states do have some shares in how this is going to be used, especially the ones that are signed on. I think better communication is key on how we actually go about this. And if the states have a creative solution is how they want to interface with RIT people, and how we can work together to try to make it a better, more robust system that everybody gets what they want out of it. Because if you don't get what you want out of it, if you don't have access, well, you can't use it. If you're not using it, what's the point of having it? That's one of the problems with the CRM as it was implemented. Another problem is that a lot of the data was messed up. It was messed up during some transfers, and we spent a lot of time cleaning it up, too much time cleaning it up. I think there might have been better ways to be able to actually have achieved the goal of sanitizing our data. But we are where we are currently. And so now the next goal is getting it into Zoho and then getting it into the hands of the states. Now, I don't claim to be a Civi or a CRM super administrator. I don't know all the ins and outs of this, how the CRM works. I'm very technical. I know my way around a lot of stuff. I'm sure it's something I need to get more familiar with. But as far as from a user perspective, if there's problems, we need to figure out how to fix it. If you're not getting the access you need, if you're not getting the data you need, we need to figure out how to fix it. Otherwise, what's the point? So I do think those are conversations we need to have as states that are using it as well with staff to try to find ways. And I welcome anybody's input on how we can make it more user friendly and make sure everybody has the functionality that they need built in towards working for you guys at the state level. I know we've had our challenges with Civi at the Florida level, and now we're on Nation Builder, and it's kind of tragic that we moved over, which means that what we were doing at the national level isn't working. So we need to revisit that and and actually have open communication with our shareholders, which are the states, on how to best move forward and get everything that you guys need.
Awesome. Does anyone have any other questions? I think we rolled them effectively for an hour. You know, as libertarians, if we let it go on, we could probably go for like 8 hours. You know, I've heard about the 12-hour long meetings. If not, if you both want to give like your elevator
Sure.
spiel closing statement why we should support you over the current chair, or just in general for chair, go ahead. I think Mr. Rutherford, you're up first.
Okay, I'd be glad to go first on that. Thank you. Yeah, I've been involved in the Libertarian Party for a while. I've seen what has not worked, what has worked. I've seen that things after Reno in 2020, with fundraising, membership numbers, just a lot of things didn't work as well, especially as promised on that. And I've been fighting the Libertarian National Committee for years, ever since I've been on it, to be functional, to be purposeful, to support the states. And I have the ability to do that. I've had it for years. I've shown it. I've shown it by all the nonprofits of which I've been chair or chairman or president of my business aspects, being appointed by Republican governors to keep a Democrat off the table, to Indiana Public Defender Commission. And the commission has grown tremendously, but has saved the taxpayers a lot of money in doing that. And is more effective, and it's keeping fewer people in cages and being able to get adequate attorneys to defend them when the state wants to put them in jail when they shouldn't be putting them in jail. So we've had just great effects on that, and I've been able to be the leader at the level that needs to be done. 7 years of Indiana state chair, several state chairs before me and after me. We've all been doing the same things, but I was reelected many times and did it for 7 years. Served for 2 years on the Libertarian National Committee, learned a lot from that, and have kept doing stuff. I was very involved in the Rainwater for Governor campaign, giving advice, raising money, finding resources, talking to people for support, meeting with people for support, and along with other wonderful people who are working on that campaign. I know what success is and how to move forward. I know how to do it. I know how to work with people. You don't get involved in so many boards, etc., and invited to them. I mean, I refuse a lot of board requests because I just don't have the time for it. And I've got more important things like the Libertarian Party to deal with. But you don't do that if people don't think you can work with others yet get things accomplished organizationally. And that doesn't mean that I go in and I run the office. I can't do that. I could, but I've got my own business as a lawyer. And it's also much healthier to hire other people who that is their 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year job and is important to them. That they do it, and we set the good guidelines. We give the good guidance. We're there if they need us to talk to somebody to help solve a problem or to get resources. We're there to call and gather resources, and I've done all of that. I haven't mentioned this, but was the chair of the last capital campaign for my fraternity at my college, and we broke all records for fundraising ever, way more than the college thought we could raise. It just wasn't me. It was me leading with other leaders and with other people getting the job done. But I was the chairman, and the buck stopped with me in getting those things done. I have the history to do that. I can do that. What libertarians need to do is, and they have done this a long time, they've kind of stopped that in some areas, especially in Indiana, but just because somebody is new and interesting, you don't elect them to become a top position. You have to see what they can do, improve themselves, and let them move up the chain. It's just to show that they have the ability to do it, unless they have something in their background, work career, working with other organizations, etc., that suggests that they can do it. But all too often, we have some poor person who did a good job running a county fair table, gets promoted to a statewide position and they're way in over their head in experience. I've got the background to be a national chair. I know how to run a 30,000-foot organization. I know how to work with other people and have done it for years and years. And that's why I should be elected national chair.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you, TJ and LPPA, for having me on tonight, and as well as Mr. Rutherford. Been around the block for a long time, been in this movement for a very long time, and also have an extensive background that mirrors what I've been doing in the party. Business-wise, Wendy's entrepreneur, oversee many different stores, both Wendy's, Dairy Queen, Island Grill, etc. And I'd like to bring that for-profit experience into the party. Also on many nonprofit boards, Keys Cares, which is an emergency services nonprofit we have down here in the Florida Keys that works with the county on emergency services, the Greater Key West Chamber of Commerce. I see how things operate successfully, and I've seen things how they operate unsuccessfully. Been on the board a long enough time to really see what our opportunities are, where we're at, what works, what doesn't work. And I want to bring my experience up to the position of chair. I think that I have a very unique and extensive background as a business person that puts me in a position that I think will get the party to where we need to go. Looking out over the next 5-10 years, we have a big fight that we're up against, and we need the resources. We need the money, we need the members, we need the ballot access, we need the candidate support, the affiliate support, and we need to unite the party. We need to bring people together and to under a common goal to get things done. And ultimately, my goal is to see the party respected, loved even, and effective. And I think that's a shared goal amongst many of us. And I want to thank everybody here and that's listening for all the time, money, and effort you've all put in, free of charge, to benefit this cause. And I think if we're going to be successful as a political party, we need to get back to our fundamentals and focus on what matters in order to excel. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. I think often about what the world's going to look like as she grows up. And I think the battle for liberty is continuous. It's not just our generation, it's the generation after. So what we do now is going to affect the future. And quite frankly, I think these are times that the Libertarian Party is needed to be effective the most. It would be a huge waste of our potential if we don't do everything we can to become the centrifugal force of liberty within the United States. And I think that as a board, as an LNC, as a party, our single-minded mission should be to achieve those results. So with that, I thank you, and I hope to see you all in DC next week.
TJ, thank you. Pennsylvania, thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for attending. I'm gonna stop recording now.